So I've been seeing a lot of advice out there for freelance models on how to look at casting breakdowns to avoid scams where you may end up at some creep photographer's house and something bad could end up happening to you. But a large part of the conversation that I feel is missing is that just because you may be signed with an agency does not mean that you are magically safe or successful. And we'll get to that part a little bit later, but starting with the safety. Just because you are signed with an agency doesn't mean you need to stop looking around and paying attention to every little aspect of every casting and every booking. And when you get there, looking around and seeing who's there. These are things you should continue to do when you have an agency, because there are going to be agents who simply don't know what they're doing. They got hired recently and they don't know how to properly vet and thoroughly research clients before sending their models to a casting. Some are just too lazy to do it. Some are overworked, and some random clients may slip through the cracks sometimes. And even those who are amazing agents who have all the time in the world and put in all the effort in the world to making sure that they look into and vet clients before sending their models to any castings or bookings can't predict who is going to be a pervert and who's going to be a harasser and who's going to be a scam. So they also need you to keep your eyes and ears and every other sense open when you go into castings and bookings. And when you see that something feels wrong or looks off or feels off, you need to speak up. You need to leave the job or the dangerous situation and immediately call your agent and tell them what is going on and say, I don't feel safe. I don't feel like this is what you thought you were sending me to. I feel like this is a scam because A, B, and C. And give them as much information as you can so that hopefully if they're a good agent, they will ask you to go in and get any other models that are from the agency and have them leave. They'll email immediately to anybody who has yet to arrive at the casting or job and say, please do not go. We're trying to figure out what's going on. And they'll figure out whether or not you should go back to that client because maybe it's just a little bit of a misunderstanding, or if it really is something that's wrong and you need to leave that client. One time I had a casting with a client that was very legitimate, was having a Fashion Week show in New York and had shown in New York Fashion Week prior. So it seemed like a legitimate client with a legitimate business, no scams here and no scandals that anybody knew of. When I was in the casting, a second model had come in and accidentally ripped the pants when trying to put them on, and the client was very inappropriate in his reaction towards the model. It made me feel very uncomfortable, which he could tell based on the rest of my behavior, and I ended up then leaving the casting along with that other model who had ripped the pants. Even though that model was not from my agency, I felt like it was just a bad interaction, and I definitely did not want to work with this client, and I wanted my agent to know that this client is a little aggressive when things get ripped and things go wrong in fashion a lot, so that's a bit of a red flag from me. And it was the weekend, it was a Friday, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go in next week into the agency and tell them the story. This is too long for an email, and it's not that important. It's not like he did something really horrible. It was more of an orange flag than a red flag. And on this weekend, this designer starts messaging multiple girls from my agency who had gone to that casting, including myself. But to me, the message was very PG, and I didn't reply or even open it. I was like, I'm not gonna touch that until like Monday, and then when I'm already on the way to the agency, and I'll just write, please do not contact me outside of my agency, and it'll be okay. So I don't open the message. But other girls get the messages, and they get much more graphic and sexual messages from this designer. And so they start calling my agent immediately on the weekend because this is an emergency. And if ever that happens to you, you should absolutely immediately tell your agency what is going on. If anybody sent you to that casting, they need to know what is going on immediately. Even if it is outside of business hours or business days, go ahead and contact them and let them know what is happening. So the models did that. And the agent tells off the client and is like, don't contact my models anymore, and did a great job of protecting us, and immediately was like, you know what? No, we are done with this client. I have heard too much. I am not allowing my models to go to this casting or to this booking and risk their safety. I don't care about the money that this designer is offering, because she could have just not cared about it and booked the models and made the money in commission. But instead, she made sure to protect her models at her agency and decided to no longer work with that client, which is a large reason why I'm still with this agent to this day. And the client ends up messaging me on Instagram and is like, how dare you tell your agent that I messaged you? I didn't even say anything that bad. And is like going off on me in the messages. And I write him back and I'm like, dude, I hadn't even told my agent what you did yet. And I think in his mind, he remembered him yelling at that other model who ripped the pants and thought that that was why I must have been the one who tattled and went to my agency. And I remember he wrote it in some way like, oh, you tattled to your agency. It was very weird how he wrote it. And I tell him no, I didn't even contact her. You're such a fucking perv that you contacted so many models in so many inappropriate ways that they contacted. So I don't know why you're yelling at me. I'm not the one who did it. And then his embarrassed little butt blocked me and I blocked him right back. And it was great that our agency protected us. But there was another moment where I'm on a job, I'm out of town, and I'm being body painted in nothing but a thong. And the client should have made sure that I had a private area to be body painted away from the other people who don't need to be watching me be painted all the time. But this client was very bad at making sure you had privacy. I'd had multiple times where they were just doing my makeup, including body painting, in the back of storage rooms in the stores. This time they had this old pizza joint at a mall that had been gutted where we were doing our prep work, and the male model was in there. And the male model had already had multiple complaints during this job for racist comments, homophobic comments. He just generally wasn't somebody that anybody wanted to be around. And he was staring at me while I'm being body painted in nothing but a thong, very creepily, to the point that it's not just making me uncomfortable, but the makeup artists are starting to complain, the other models are noticing, and they're like, this guy is absolutely a creep, he is creeping on you. And we're just like, what can we do? And we try and turn away and he's still being a creep about it, but you can't really prove that he's staring at you. And so we keep doing the job. And then there comes a point where I need to go to the restroom, and this gutted out pizza joint has restrooms in it, but they have taken the stall doors off. And we have all discussed that we thought it was weird that the stall doors were missing, but the bathrooms are working. And so this male model knows there are no stall doors and knows that I have to squat over the toilet because, again, this was talked about very openly and very loudly. The makeup artist was like, don't forget to squat when you go to the bathroom because don't want to get paint on the toilet seat, and also having the toilet seat take all that hard work off of the back of my thighs. So this male model knew that I would be squatting naked over a toilet that had no door in front of it. So as I go into the restroom, the other two female models had already used the restroom and were washing their hands as I am starting to use the restroom, and the male model starts to barge into the female restroom. The two female models literally block him with their bodies, trying to push him out. And they're like, no, go out. She's going to the back. Do not come in here. And he literally, quite literally, physically with his hands, pushed them away aggressively to push his way in to be able to see the 1 square inch of my labia that he had not seen yet. That's how much of a perv this guy was. And then as we push him out and we're all freaking out at him, he claims that he was just looking for soap. But when you are body painted, full body paint, what they do is they have giant Dawn bottles, the one that's like this big, to take the body paint off of me at the end of the night to help it to kind of dissolve. And they had 4 of those giant Dawn bottles, and they happened to be on the counter less than an arm length away from where the male model had been sitting. And mind you, this happened on the second day of our 3-day job. And so for a whole day and a half, he had already stared at 4 giant bottles of Dawn next to him. And he could have taken any of those into the bathroom that apparently had no soap. And also, why did he not notice that there was no soap for the entire first 1 day and a half? So the entire story was complete bullshit. So we call my agency, we all agree, the makeup artist agree, the other models agree, we're all talking to my agent, we're like, this is horrible. And then the worst part is my agent fakes like they agree on the phone with me. My agent gets on the phone and acts fake outrage and is like, oh my God, this model is a danger. We do not want this model at our agency. We do not want this model representing our name. We definitely don't want this model backstage with other runway models when you have to get naked and we don't have a way to separate anybody, and him to be staring at the female models while they change for every look, because a lot of times the men don't have as many looks. So they're standing back there waiting around while female models are doing 5, 6 looks until they get to do the finale because they already did their walk. And that's a prime time for them to be a pervert. So we don't want perverts backstage. And the agent is saying these things verbatim. Like, it's not just me saying them. She is saying things like, I would be worried about him doing this to any other girl backstage, and what about our underage models? Like, they are fully acting like they fully get it, they fully agree, they are fully outraged. Oh my God, we're gonna drop this model, but just stay calm and continue to do the job with him for another day and a half, because we can't replace him. Even though you're in a major city with a lot of models, we just can't replace him. And so we're just gonna ban him from talking to you. Of course, that doesn't work, and the next day, as I'm being body painted again, still in nothing but a thong, and still the makeup company does nothing to separate this male model who's now known problem among the company and the agency, even though his makeup only takes 10 minutes as a male, and he could have been taken out somewhere else and kept somewhere else while I was body painted for 3 hours, and instead he was allowed to sit next to me again for another 3 hours, and he came up and got in my face the next day with a fake bullshit apology that everyone was disgusted at, and even the makeup artists are standing there, and I'm like, go away from me. I'm literally raising my, and he won't go away, and he's like looking me up and down and licking his lips, like the most disgusting. The makeup artists are outraged, but they're low level, they can't do shit about it. And so I get home, and like, mind you, there's more drama at the airport, all this, but point being, I get home, I don't think about it. I think that I trust my agency enough to do what they said, and like a week or two goes by and there's a last minute job. And they apparently, the whole thing was fake. They never cared about my safety or any other model's safety, never dropped the guy because they just wanted to keep making money off of him. And they put us on a last minute job together. The first thing he did at that job was get up in my face to let me know that he hadn't been dropped and that he was proud that he could still get away with being a complete pervert and piece of crap. And I went into the agency after that and I was like, what the fuck? Like, not only did you agree, but you like faked on the phone and agreed that you were outraged. Like, if you weren't, then just don't be. Like, if you just don't care, then just don't care, but don't lie to me and so aggressively lie to me and get on the phone and act like you care. And then not only do you not drop him, but you don't even bother to make sure we don't end up on the same job, knowing what he did and the fact that he continues to try and cross every boundary that I set. Do you not understand that's what a predator does? And she just sat there calmly and looked at me like it was nothing. And it was the moment that I realized, and the rose-colored glasses came off, how much that woman allowed bad things to happen to her models, and how much that woman was so fake, and I just never fucking saw it. And I was delusional when I did see it because I didn't want to see it, because she was my mentor and someone I looked up to and someone I wanted to be one day, and it just all came crashing down in that moment, and I knew I had to leave that agency if I ever wanted to be safe. And when I left them, it got even worse, and I tried to take some legal action, and they point blank told me, like, if you take legal action, we will tell everyone that you take legal action and that makes you a bad model, and we'll make sure you never work again. So you probably don't want to do this. And they were like calling me, threatening me, texting me, threatening me, and telling me that they're going to call every agency I ever sign with to make sure like that people know what I'm doing, and just like not good stuff at all. And all over one male model. They could have just dropped that model and actually protected me, or they could have just never faked the outrage. Just been like, you know what, that sucks that he's a perv, get through the job because we don't care. Maybe don't say we don't care, but like, why fake all the outrage? And that was a major agency. So at the boutique agency, I was way more protected, and that's why I stay with her. And at that big agency, I was just treated like a pawn with a shelf life. And they just didn't care about my safety. And the fake outrage just showed me how dirty these agencies can be and how these big agencies really see you as nothing more than a disposable pawn. So just because you are signed with an agency does not mean that you will be safe. It does not mean that you will automatically be successful after, because let's step aside from the safety for a second and talk about success. Just because you get signed at an agency doesn't mean that you immediately start booking left and right and that they're the perfect jobs for you, that it's the perfect city for you. Sometimes you don't work at all. And hopefully the agency is nice enough to release you from your contract a few months later and allow you to go find a better fit. And if it is the right fit, but there's just something off, hopefully they have an open conversation with you. Go to them and ask questions like, what can I do to get more bookings? What kind of feedback are you getting? What kind of opinions do you have about what we could change? You don't have to do everything they say, but get their opinion. If you're willing to sign with them, you should like their opinions and think that they understand you and know their market. So if they say, you know what, we think maybe you should dye your hair a little bit or get a fresh cut, maybe a different shape of a haircut. Maybe it's that you need to show them your wardrobe and them help you pick out the clothes that look best on you because you don't know how to really do it yourself yet. There are things that maybe you haven't learned yet. And maybe you can ask them about signing up for more test shoots, maybe even investing in some paid test shoots depending on their list and your current budget. Maybe you can also look into taking some cheaper free jobs that have things like editorials, so that way you can expand your book and meet some really great people on that team, from photographer to makeup artist to wardrobe stylist, and expand your market. Maybe it's that you need to travel to a different market. If you're in New York, but you're a little bit shorter and really smiley and bubbly, you might need to come over to LA because we love that here. And in New York, it's not their favorite. They love the edgy face. They love all black. And of course, they have more than just one type of modeling there, but it's about finding your right city. I lived in Los Angeles for many years and I did great with commercials and jeans and happy clients, but I never knew how much of a shoe market was in New York. And being a 6.5, I wish I had gone earlier when I had more energy to run around New York, and I would have had tons more shoe clients than I ever had in my career. So sometimes it's about thinking about the different aspects of what type of modeling you're doing and what market you're in and how you're marketing yourself and how the agency is marketing you. So make sure you are trying to have those open conversations with them before just dropping them, unless of course there's any issues that are red flags, and then go ahead and drop them and go find a better fit. Remember, there's always the option of working on your own, but that's not what this video is about. So let's circle back to safety for a few more things I want to mention. I saw a model giving some advice about looking at a breakdown and how to read them and understand the difference between a legitimate casting and a scam. And this model goes on to talk about how this specific breakdown showed that the photographer was asking you to come to their residence to do a test shoot for free, and that you would be doing your own hair and makeup and styling. So you will be there by yourself with just you and the photographer in their home. And the model goes on to say that this is a red flag. And I would say that this is more of an orange flag. Because although it should raise some, attention and you should pay attention to it, it doesn't always mean that it is a scam or a dangerous situation. I have gone to many test shoots that were in people's apartments. I have also gone to designers' apartments who maybe have a live-in loft situation where they design and do loft on one side of the apartment and the other apartment side they live on, or maybe it's 2 stories, or maybe they have their studio in the backyard of their nice house. So sometimes you are going to residential locations for things like castings and test shoots, and even for your bookings. Sometimes there's a whole team of people there, and sometimes it's just you and the photographer. That doesn't automatically make it a scam or make it dangerous. There have been many times that I have done test shoots where my agency has gave me the contact to the photographer, and I went to the photographer's house, just me and the photographer. There have even been times where I have met a photographer on Instagram. They have DM'd me or I have DM'd them, and then we have agreed to do a free test shoot at their residence with no other team, no hair artist, no makeup artist. So it is just me and the photographer in their home. And luckily, every single time it's worked out for me, and I have never felt unsafe or had any issues. But I've also made sure to do thorough research on those people. And even if you're the best researcher, You never know. Some people are really good at hiding their creepiness, and you should do whatever makes you feel safe. If that means saying no to any photo shoot that is in a photographer's apartment, then that's the choice that you make for your career. And if that means asking to be able to bring along somebody, maybe your partner, maybe a parent, maybe a best friend, just for a safeties in numbers kind of thing, that's also something you could do. But that's also something to think about. Just because you go to a photo shoot that has 2 people on the team, say a photographer and a hair artist, that doesn't mean you're safe. Safety in numbers could also mean that if there's 2 people trying to hurt you, you are no longer safe because there's only one of you. So it's about always keeping your eyes open and your ears open and all of your senses, and always watching for everything, always asking questions. And whenever you don't feel comfortable, leave the situation, leave the test shoot, leave the agency, leave whoever, wherever. If you are at an agency, again, go ahead and call them and let them know what you're doing and what's going on, so that way they can take care of you. And if they need to, they can warn the other models. But I just want to make it clear that just because you are with an agency does not mean that you are magically safe and that everything is thoroughly vetted. The agency can't possibly know who is a creep and who isn't every single time. And even when they do sometimes, we've seen the stories come out about Victoria's Secret people or people at Abercrombie and Fitch who had done inappropriate things to models. I have heard personal stories from models dealing with Victoria's Secret employees that had inappropriately touched them and harassed them, and that when they called their agent, the agent just kind of was like, well, it happens. And that was their answer. They did not stop working with that client. They did not protect that model. They did not try and find any justice or get that client to stop doing it or stop putting their models around what they now knew was a dangerous, perverted, creepy client. So sometimes bad things happen even when you're at an agency. It is not some magical fix to make everything safe and fabulous. You still need to keep your eyes open. You still need to protect yourself. And I don't say this to try and scare you. Again, for me, there's only been a handful of times that things happened that were bad, and unfortunately, they were all through a major agency. And please remember, everything in the modeling industry is a case-by-case basis. Your modeling most likely will vary, and if you have any questions on this topic or any other topic, always feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll tag you when it's ready. If you can't wait for next week's video or just want to ask a quick question, check me out on TikTok, Lena Coco Hunter, for more advice.